Alex Answer here. It is December 11th in the year 2018. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to be talking about the last couple of uploads and what I really think we may be looking at. Because I want to let you know that there's more than one way of looking at what Bill Gorman is showing us. Now, at the moment, I'm going to show you some photos as we talk about this. These are some photos that I downloaded from his Facebook page. So if you look up Mammoth Temples of Colorado, you will find this. So here's some things that stand out for me. It is the significance of the mammoth, the mammoth, not only to the Clovis Indians, but also to the East Indians. And with the Vedic writings, we have a lot of information that we can compare to other spiritual texts. It actually takes us very much down the rabbit hole when we start looking at the idea of certain deities reappearing and being known by different names. This is actually going in a very different direction than Zeitgeist, but similar. It's reaching a level of awareness that there are certain stories that have been told and retold around the world. And what we're looking at here from Bill, if what he is stumbling upon on his hikes in southwest Colorado, if in fact these are engravings or carvings, also however they were made, I would say that it's a huge discovery. I would also say that we are living now in a day and age where a lot of people don't have the attention span or the interest to look deeper into certain things. So I'm kind of addressing this from an abstract perspective of it's not just in the box of him discovering quote unquote Fern's treasure. This is me speaking. This is my perspective and looking at whatever it is that Gorman's doing. In a way, it's a form of spirituality to look at nature or to gaze into the water or to hike into the mountains in search of God's symbols. There's something more ancient in this, that modern man and woman as a collective does not represent, respect, or engage in themselves as a rite of passage. We talked about the rise, by the way, of targeted individuals, i.e. gang stalking, and we live in a high-tech world where a lot of people are literally pulled in to this world of computers. What I'm proposing to you is that what we're looking at could have come about through a number of ways. However someone may interpret it. They may use certain names and say, hey, this looks like something from the past, something that we've seen from a book. It may be that, it may not be that. But what we see here are a number of faces, a number of mammoth statues, which do happen to be worshipped in the ancient world. I talked a little bit more over at outsidethebox.vhx.tv in my members only area about a recent mystical experience. And for those that don't know, I don't see things and I don't hear things. Sometimes I'm awakened to a truth within, like when I started getting more vocal about the archons. It was after watching a video on YouTube and there was something within me that awakened. And that same type of experience can happen for some of you if you're looking for the truth and seeking the truth and coming across certain videos. There can literally almost be like a fire within you that then starts leading you to truth. If you seek truth, and you're talking about truth a lot, by the way, synchronicity is going to find you in a number of different ways. So I talk about that experience over there in the members only area because this type of work that I do is not exactly, it may be popular when Netflix or certain channels present it, but the work that I do isn't viewed by a lot of people, so your support is appreciated. Also, a very special thank you to Patrick for signing up there and Patreon. So there's exclusive content over there, and I get into a recent mystical experience where I wouldn't say it was a dream, it wasn't hearing voices, but something within. And Vishnu came to me, And I haven't actually studied the East as much as I should as a result of a lot of programming of this culture that's highly ethnocentric and judgmental. And I actually am realizing how deep some of the talking points of this society has actually prevented me from researching certain things or not seeing its level of importance. I may not have demonized it, but I may not have seen it as important to the things that I discuss, maybe an extra puzzle piece here and there. There's also a time in a man's life or a woman's life on the path of truth and truth speaking, not just looking for the truth, but actually sharing it with others, that people become ready to look at certain levels of truth where before they were busy with maybe their own stuff or maybe more elementary truths. I'm not meant to go necessarily on the path of Michael Tellinger or other individuals, and other people have. And some people, I wonder what their agenda is, what they're really looking for, or because we are, in my opinion, unique souls with different unique paths. And we can be emanations of something larger. Now, by the way, there are certain spiritual texts like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which I started reading the first section of today. Going back to Bill and what he said in part 2. Because what I'm trying to do is present to you a way of inquisitive thinking about the natural world around us and the ancient world without it being so inside the box, and looking at the clues and synchronicities. In my case, right, I don't normally have certain popular names of deities come to me that I haven't studied yet, right, that actually may have like a piece of the puzzle, but that's coming to me right before Bill visits, and he's talking about Thoth. Upon doing some Googling, I found a fair amount of connections between Vishnu and Thoth, and I found a fair amount of other connections. Then, for a few hours this morning, I started resuming a reading of a section at random, by the way, at random, of DNA of the Gods. And in this section, again, yes, there's speculation that Zechariah Sitchin got it wrong. Who am I to automatically assume that just because Stanley on my show said that on this channel, and that Inky's bad, not good? I haven't actually deeply studied it, but from what we can tell, and we're going to get into how this relates to Bill stuff here in a minute, it gets pretty interesting. You got the Sumerian text version of the creation of man. You have the biblical version. There are two different versions, as most of you know. And then the Gnostic version of the fallen world, which is heavily demonized by a lot of Orthodox Christians because they're told that Gnostics basically are evil and believe that, they just want to run around doing evil to others and not face consequences. They misrepresent what they actually believe. Like people today do that. So people are still caught up in groupthink. I personally don't subscribe to any religion. I'm on the path of truth. And so I won't even let certain Gnostic belief systems put me in a box of Gnosticism to prevent me from seeing the truth somewhere else. Ultimately, I have an inner compass, and before I started reading any of the stuff, for years I was spouting out my truth, OTB-TV, the Portland, Oregon cable access version. Pretty naive to the actual spiritual text, but just coming out swinging, talking about this fallen world. And I'm not ashamed of things that I've said. Now, as I'm older, right, and I'm writing down some things, approaching 40, in 1.22 years, to be precise, or 1.18, something like that. I'm comparing what I believe and what I've come to understand through my own imagination with that which is left before us from thousands of years ago. So some people are hearing some things that I'm saying about the sun, and their ears are perking up because they've been preconditioned to demonize those people that believe that there is consciousness out there. There's something more to this world. And so I found myself surprised at that blowback, especially when you're not attacking anyone, and then asking myself, especially in recent months, because it seems like there's an epiphany within me that's going deeper and deeper. As this off-grid experience continues, there may be the challenges, but the benefits, that's also why I'm stepping back from some of the social media addiction, comment section activity, things of that nature, because I'm going deeper within to listen deeper. And I also notice patterns when I'm going deeper into a spiritual practice or meditating for multiple hours. Certain distractions will manifest in elements of the internet or the real world. Distractions. When I'm looking at a certain level, there's also a certain sense of, once a certain epiphany comes within the mind, I'm going to bring up some photographs here. Once a person hears something, they can't unhear it. So let's say that someone's exposed to truth and they may not even recognize that truth right away. there could be something healing about that truth that alters something within their DNA or brings something that was unknown to the forefront to that which is hidden is in plain sight. Let's bring this back here, because I'm not going to go through reading the whole book, DNA of the Gods. It took me a while to really understand Bill, by the way. He was contacting me for a while, like, hey, I found so-and-so in the mountains. Like, what are you talking about? You found, like, interpretive art? Because that sounds cool. But he's taking it literally. But I'm telling you, you don't necessarily have to take this literally to see the beauty in the nature. Someone doesn't have to be called crazy or be made fun of or be laughed at because they're literally looking at nature in a different way. Not their smartphone, not their Facebook feed, but nature, and they're going, what was that? Wow, could that actually be prehistoric? Sure looks like there's some organized carvings in some of these areas. So what it comes down to is it challenges traditional Orthodox religions. There's something built into this matrix. Look at that one. That almost wants to. I got these on random rotation, and this is something that I can do more often with images. Something I normally don't do, where I create a lot of present a lot of imagery within one video without actually having to go through the images. I'm just going to tell you right off the top of my head, and we'll come back. Okay, what if we are a fallen world literally? I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm saying I'm speculating. And so, like the Nibiru story, which I don't go deep into, Tiamat, right? Is there some belief system that maybe Earth is part of something that blew up once? Sure sounds like something out of Superman. What if Superman's based on something true? But we have this rich history of various angels that have fallen back into this world and or teachers like Jesus in order to try to help it. We've also had the manipulation of our DNA. We have the story of Enlil versus Enki, and debates today over which one was good, which one wasn't good. And we wonder today about the race war theologies. We wonder today about the wars, if perhaps this is actually the result of a family feud. So when Bill says, I think the Garden of Eden is in Colorado, the reason I don't immediately think he's nuts is because I believe in my heart there is something out of the ordinary that is here. And whether or not it's this or it's that, if I start seeing patterns of things that could be organized that sure as hell look pre-Sumerian, or as he believes between the 11,000 and 14,000 year time period. And I already believe the Creator guided me to Colorado, because I do, and I've spoken about that. You also know that I believe that a great war is coming, that is being controlled and staged by the unseen forces. If you watch this channel, you know that's my level of understanding, and that it's mocked. And it's not just Soros, and it's not just Trump, and it's not just Clinton. It's not just it's not just the deep state pizza. It's not just Illuminati. There's something beyond what a lot of people are fixated on. And it raises other questions. Why did they kick so many people out of Costilla County? And they still are today, with a guy named Richard about to face court in Costilla County and lawsuits going on there. It's an extension of what's been going on. And I've been talking about that tirelessly, and it's a thankless job. In fact, it'll get you attacked. And there isn't really an easy way to help a lot of people that have been victimized and forced into homelessness, having been in that situation myself. But I'll say on that note, maybe there's something more mysterious about the San Luis Valley than we already know. We know about the Chris O'Brien books. These mountains are near the San Luis Valley. Closer to the San Luis Valley than Denver, Colorado, for those less familiar with this area. Southern Colorado and many places around it are about 5 hours from Denver, just to let you know, or 3 hours. So these areas here, I felt going as far back as 5 years ago that I was returning home. Now, whether that was a past life as an Indian, whether it be Clovis, whether it be Hopi, or whether it be Navajo, whether it be Ute, whether it be any of the others that were known to roam through the San Luis Valley, the Cortez area, and everywhere in between that area of southern Colorado. Not so much the east, not so much the southeast, but the sweet spot of southwest Colorado to southern Colorado. There's something majestic. Yes, there's Dulce to the south. I don't go deep into New Mexico conspiracy lore, because a lot of that stuff that's on the internet is repeated stuff about Phil Schneider. Odd story about Phil Schneider's wife. She contacted me when I had a show in Portland and offered some tapes. And I think she thought better of it. If her husband, in fact, was whacked, why give them those tapes to Alex? But that was back in 2006. So I do believe that there are underground facilities. I think there's a lot of hype on the internet about it. And then before we go back to the images, like, I brought this up with Bill, and I'm just planting the seed in the mind's eye. I don't know everything, but I know when I start recognizing patterns. And I got a lot of these ideas from Enter the Valley by Chris O'Brien. And he didn't really want to go into it too deeply. And there's alleged entrances to undergrounds here and government people that maybe used to work for DC and retired on big ranches that have a lot of money in certain areas. I came here because intuitively I felt, for those that have watched my past videos, they know that I was warning people in Portland, Oregon about World War III and the 2020s and other earth changes. So I have a history of being concerned about certain things. Colorado seemed to be a place that drew me in, and I think there'll be some safe spots. And it's interesting that I'm meeting Bill, and Bill has been bringing this to my attention, that this general area and beyond it, and we're talking about, like, for hours in all directions, including New Mexico. There's something mystical about these areas. There are other people that come here looking for portals, by the way, to other worlds. There's an abstract number of different creation stories. Bringing us back to Bill suspecting, right, as he's walking along and being considered a kook by most people that aren't bothering to, that I know, verify these things, although he says he's talking with some people at Adams State College, but to have someone actually come out and verify. Okay, and if it was maybe carved during a time where no one was there, but it's believed the Clovis Indians were there, but I'm just saying, like, what if it's carved, but we don't know who carved it? But the other thing that I haven't yet said in this video is the possibility, but I was leading into it, like, what if this is a part of an old world that broke off and became Earth? What if those are spirits almost frozen in time? Go back here a little bit. Because there's a little bit of a nature and a tone to the shapes of these things, or these large giants. It is almost as if something froze something. Or, because I've had somewhat mystical experiences, for example, in Portland, I think back to Laurelhurst Park. I'm not even going to interpret half of this stuff, but there's a lot there that you might pick up on, and I'm showing you the full image, and it should be high enough resolution that this is more clear than past presentations on this topic. So I don't think that it's outside the realm of possibility that there could be spirits expressing themselves out of rock, including the jinn. They are believed, like archons, to be non-physical, although they can animate humans or possess humans. But with the jinn, they can also manifest in rock and other forms of nature, which led me to think and speculate in a previous video about certain cities where they have epidemics of people offing themselves. Could there be something disincarnate that literally wants their soul? And could there be certain dark portals in around mountain towns where there's a lot of lower energy because of the drugs and the greed? Well, if you've been through Alamosa, Colorado, you know the answer to that one. We can have all these legends in our mind about beautiful Blanca and Sipapoo and all of this stuff. And then you actually start traveling through some of the small towns, from the Hispanic to the white. Not so much about ethnicity, it's an energy. There does seem to be an overtone of something disincarnate. It could be possible that the consciousness of God is here, but also that we would identify to be the devil. There's certain power points on the planet that could be extremely high and low. Also, certain people started attacks on me after I went off grid, whereas before that, everything seemed to be fine. There was something about this place, and since I've been here, there's been challenge, but there's been spiritual growth that didn't exist before. A certain level of determination, a certain level of newfound focus. There was another image there that I was trying to catch. He's highlighting the strange potential skull here. And who knows, maybe the Indiana Jones movie was just there to kind of poo-poo the idea. And other forms of pop culture. And other counterfeit claims. But there could be something more real. So there's almost something about this that almost seems, because there's the actual original creation story, by the way, which this book gets into. And then there's the Garden of Eden story, which is interpreted different ways. But from the Sumerian texts, they were being enlightened with higher consciousness by Enki, and Enlil was pissed, also known as the false god or the demiurge or Yaldabaoth in the Nag Hammadi. Something very phallic looking here, but some of these things look like they could have been spirits with robes, or like something out of Lord of the Rings, and then something just almost turned them to stone. It's quite curious. But in the emerald tablets of Thoth, there is some sort of reference to the apes of the day, of the hairy barbarians coming after him, and him saying, no, I'm just trying to give you knowledge. No, relax. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, fine. Meet my spear. Zzz, and then he basically dictated to them as they were put into a neutralized taser state, which is kind of an interesting... So there was a request from a viewer to go over the emerald tablets of Thoth. And I've actually been thinking about this for over 1 year. I will actually sit on an idea first for sometimes a full calendar year to make sure that I'm not pushing some sort of Archon hijack. And I'll ask a friend or another person, what do you think about Thoth? Is this information potentially worth covering? We're not trying to lay down and start trying to find some deity to start worshiping and hopping up and down all day, but it's not a bad idea to pray during these times. It's not a bad idea to actually be willing to look for the truth. Now that we are gifted in a generation and time where we have books that we can also get at cheaper rates at thrift stores, and if you're looking for the truth like this will literally just jump out at you for a quarter. This literally was a quarter, 50 cents. I'm not kidding you. I'm not at the bookstore. You're not going to find it for a quarter or 50 cents at like your average. Like sometimes truth is looking for you. And if you're on a soul destiny marked for truth, and that is who you are and what you do, then truth will find you. I'll apologize to those of you that wish that I was instead tonight out dishwashing somewhere hours and hours and hours away. And instead, I'm choosing to focus on the great work. I'm choosing to put my faith in something higher. I'm choosing to look at the synchronicities and going, wow, looking at this description of Vishnu. Vishnu, by the way, likes to run around with the mace. Also, this type of other device, a chakra, 4 arms. It's like Mortal Kombat bastardized some of the Indian deities with Mortal Kombat, the video game and the movie, as entertaining as that was. But a little bit of humor there. Goro! Like that's going to be people's first experience with the idea of the 4 arms. I was never raised to be religious. All I can tell you is the same programming you receive living in the same society that I live in, the United States. I'm from Oregon, now I'm in Colorado, right? It's the same. So you have the same ability that I do to go out and hike to certain areas and have certain interests to basically go Google online in the raw and maybe have your own spiritual experience following your intuition and the keywords. Because then for me, it's okay comparing these different deities and not then on a path of then calling it all an archon or something evil necessarily. I'm looking for the patterning to this. So, okay, the sharing of knowledge, what kind of knowledge and wisdom? And then, of course, coming upon certain themes of people being under attack for having wisdom and having knowledge that was left over, and maybe manipulations of the fallen ones, family feuds over humans that know too much. Sounds like the Enki and Enlil thing. Not even to say that Enki, right, by helping man learn how to procreate, maybe give Adam and Eve some early forms of porno, get it going on, whereas before they had no apparatus and they were not ashamed of their nakedness. There could also be the agenda on the side of Enki to make a whole bunch of humans for other purposes. But ultimately, there does seem to be something significant there that is documented in that book, The DNA of the Gods, because there are parallel creation stories to where there was a moment of gnosis given, and then the real story of the banishment from the Garden of Eden. So I find it all to be very, very curious, being here in Colorado and feeling that I was guided here initially, and the role that the general Midwest states, or the place that they're going to be in, the reality that they're not going to be experiencing in the event of certain realities or pole shifts. It was years ago, right, that the public was generally aware the government had relocated to the Denver area. And then just by this general awareness of some of the things that are obviously coming, I talked with Leon about his vision of China and Russia occupying this country. We talked in 2007 It'd be a couple of years ago that I started to suspect that this could be in the 2020s. Whether it's one thing or another, and it doesn't even have to be called the end of the world, it certainly seems like this society is about to go through something. And I don't think that we're on a path to a collective shift in consciousness. I don't particularly study the Kali Yuga, but I think I'm going to look a little more into it, right? So the cycle of the Kali Yuga, as we descend into this lower world, because in the Kali Yuga, we're going down and we just started. We just fell about 5,000 years ago, which is interesting because then we can actually look at, okay, well, there's this claim that we fell and began the cycle about 5,000 years ago. Well, what happened 5,000 years ago? It was the rise of a lot of patriarchal religions. It was the end of the goddess and the feminine respected on the world stage. And there are even older religions that feature the serpent as something other than Lucifer, or as something other than the way that the church has presented the serpent, or a form of animal. And there could be different forms. There could be plenty of evil that's used the serpent as well, right? But I'm saying that I don't know that it's all David Ickish, all one-sided. And I think that when you look at the history of the world's religions, there's also John Rhodes. So there are other people that have done studies into ancient reptilians, hollow earth. And they don't all come away saying the same thing. So there is something deeper about the genetics on the earth. And I am actually recounting a John Rhodes interview on Coast to Coast that I listened to here off the grid when the internet wasn't on. I'm saving power listening to my podcast, listening to these Coast to Coast interviews where they talk about the ancient world. And I've had a lot of time to sit and think now for several years here off the grid in Colorado about what I really feel is going on. And I think I've covered a huge amount of ground with just what I'm speculating to you. But I do think that there is an alien connection with the American Southwest. Who knows why that is? Okay, so even within that, let's say there is one, that there is an underground, right? That Black Ops today controls what goes on in the underground. We have the hybridization program. Now that's interesting because that's what was going on back in the day. And there's also feuds also about forms of humanity being brought up that weren't the common dumbed down, super bulky, no sexual body parts, no intelligence, just move brick here. And when we look at some of these, whether they're carvings or they were naturally formed, it almost looks like these could have been early prototypes. If in fact there were early forms of human creation here in the American Southwest, what if some of these depictions represent the throwaways or those that were no longer wanted? Now, some of these, and he added some text on Facebook where you can find these, again, Mammoth Temples of Colorado. Some of these, he's making a note that, hey, folks, this is obviously organized. Look at this one. Look at another. And we're not even all the way zoomed in. And you'd have to be at a certain level of physical health to actually get up and hike on some of these mountains. I mean, it's pretty dangerous out there. And so going back to the idea of spirits in nature, I've seen it in Oregon. I've seen literally phallic members around the area of the tree's root, or the tree's root around the ground or stump area, looking like a male member. Breasts also. And this being very common. Eyes. And I am not someone that's big into mushrooms, but when I was in Oregon, there was access to things like that. So when I would experiment with getting close to nature in that way, my eyes, my inner eye, was illuminated to nature's eye, watching me. I would enter into a realm to where I was under surveillance from the world of nature and its grid. I never really did megadose. Always was too scared of that. But it definitely is something that can tap someone into a parallel world. And certain people with certain genetics, I talk about this story on demand. A little bit more about the Hindu synchronicity. But I tell a story about how the trinity of the three deities, which is really one, the three in one, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Now, despite the fact that some Orthodox people may be rolling their eyes, when you have a series of experiences to where that name may come to you, or you may see it on a street sign, or it may be stamped on the back of a canopy like the one I was living in said Brahma. When I took the mushrooms on Powell Butte in Portland, Oregon, the mountain was literally breathing Shiva. And for the only time in my life, I saw myself from the perspective of that Portland volcano. And it was like, human, human, get off me. And then I saw a light in the sky that all of a sudden appeared. And there's a story of mushrooms and UFOs. Then I got on the spike that I was riding at the time. I was living nearby in Gresham off 181st and Powell. And it was dark. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm tripping now. It's starting to set in, the trip, and it's getting dark. Better get out of here. So I get on the bike and I'm pedaling and I go down the hill and I really felt like the mountain had ejected me from the park. I actually hit a gate and my body flew over and I felt like I was in slow motion. That could have been something bad. I could have hit a body part. Could have been some damage, but no. So I never had an experience like that elsewhere, but rarely was I that deep in nature. Because I was that deep in nature and that turned on, primal nature elements were coming to me. And by being at least 1/4, at least that I know of, East Indian through the dad's side, there is possibly dormant DNA. And through the mix of the different DNA that I have, there seems to be a common denominator with why I have a strong interest in some of these subjects and looking at the overlay. And how I will actually pick up on things that other people will not. That's perspective-wise. So in a world that is so fallen that certain types of combination of genetics are demonized and people are exiled, there are certain ways in which I believe that some of us with such an extreme mix that is uncommon, that we may be perceiving dormant DNA data, to where the actual history of all of this stuff. So the Sufi ancestor that I talk about from 1,000 years ago, which I'll read something from his work now. There's some sort of a reason I feel now more than ever why I'm on this path and why I feel like it's a big role. It's a big responsibility, but it's important to talk about the spiritual message and not get lost in the conspiracy and the illusions of separation. That's why I've dedicated my life to this. So my ancestor 1,000 years ago wrote this, and while a lot of people would just dismiss it because he wrote it in Herat, a lot of people will dismiss it without seeing the parallel between this and early Christianity, other forms of mysticism, the Vedic texts, other forms of spirituality. But when you hear this, I want you to think beyond duality, beyond orthodox, and how what he's actually saying is of a more mystical nature. I'll also go back to some of the rocks here. From the unmanifest I came, and pitched my tent in the forest of material existence. I passed through mineral and vegetable kingdoms. Then my mind carried me into the animal kingdom. Having reached there, I crossed beyond it. Then in the crystal clear shell of the human heart, I nursed the drop of self into a pearl, and in association with good men, I wandered around that prayer house, and having experienced that cross beyond, then I took the road that leads to God, and I became a slave at God's gate. Then the duality disappeared, and I became absorbed in the one. Khwaja Abdul Ansari, translations and introduction by Paul Smith. Paul Smith has a very great breakdown of Sufism for those of us that have never studied it, including myself, and don't know the history, that there was a renaissance of Rumi type of poetry that came out of that part of the world in 9th century, 10th century, 11th century, and that my blood and thus my consciousness has a direct line to this person that lived in peace in his own little off-grid isolation until he died in his 80s. Is there a reason why some of us as souls jump into certain bloodlines or combos in order to read certain types of DNA that may be dormant in the other bloodlines that may be perceived as pure from their side? So I just want to share that in my experience, that I certainly feel that the oddities of the uniqueness of myself has led to these types of investigations, this type of lifestyle, these types of questions, especially with regards to the alien agenda and how some white Americans are targeted individuals from someone whose genetics and DNA is slightly altered, if you will. There could be other ways of saying it, right? But by being slightly different and not of the pure, it seems that there's a slight perspective I have on the issue that is valuable to people that are targeted. It is valuable and it's sought out. There's a part of myself that can perceive how people have their senses and instincts and ancestral programming used against them by those that are manipulating them, that want their soul. So this world, this fallen world, I think even has a lot of clues. Let's go back to the images. So whether we're in a fallen world that came from another planet that later became Earth, and we're looking at old faces that were frozen in time, maybe some like the bad guys from Superman 2 where they were cast into the glass. But seriously, there could be something to that. Even within our own Hollywood movies, we've seen Solo in Star Wars. We have seen him put on ice or turned to stone by Jabba the Hutt. Ha, 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 ha. I mean, really, are all these things like just movies? Because within the realm of supernatural, I think that maybe there is something to people being turned to stone. Then there's the Rock Man from the Never-Ending Story. And there was a lot of messaging in the Never-Ending Story, a lot of symbolism. And so maybe some symbolism like the Rock Man could be there in plain sight without us really knowing it. Now, let's jump to Atreyu, the good luck dragon, right? I believe that it is Atreyu, or it may have been another name, but the main name for the character and the name for the dragon, the good luck dragon. So Vishnu is riding a bird. Now, let's talk about the description of the bird's form. The bird's form is humanoid, has a white face and an eagle beak. And Thoth, by the way, is described also, I believe, as having a beak or an eagle beak. There's some images that are shown in part 2 of the discussion from Atlantis to Colorado. So, there's a number of different possibilities. Is Vishnu riding Thoth? Is Vishnu Thoth? Or is it, because there are also connections that Thoth is Shiva. There's also other interpretations that, of course, that Vishnu also comes in the form of Brahma or has, and or Krishna. Krishna, by the way, has also been described to be a martial artist that was actually involved in battles. And there's also another Krishna text, which I have not gotten into. You see, because I really took my time to get into, going back to the images, a lot of these different spiritual texts. So on one level, I'm looking at the parallel where they're discussing the supreme deity, where true spirituality is discussing true morality and not tradition, not suppressing women, not certain rituals, right, that people commonly associate with all religions. And that's actually how they keep a lot of humans in line through the atheist and nihilistic programming, is the demonization of all oral spiritual traditions, which is the ultimate ethnocentric program. It is the ultimate opposite of any red pill. And the whole idea, by the way, of red pill to begin with is based on Gnostic thinking, or the Matrix. And the Matrix and Philip K. Dick and those things being based on other forms of spirituality other than Orthodox religions. For those of you that are becoming aware of certain conspiracy truths, you need to realize that the influence of those that have been infected by the church, not the true teachings of Jesus, not the love, but the church that burns libraries, that demonizes alternative ways of thought, the feminine, the goddess. You see? Do you understand? Women are still under control in this world. But it's not from just your average Joe man on the street. It's from the entities that have their interest in their war on women. Because there are entities that are in their position of control in this realm. Okay, so I don't know if that was off topic enough. Hey, hope you're all having a great time. Have a beer on me. But no, seriously, as I look at these texts, though, I am looking ever more closely for Vedic imagery. And I suspect that it could be there. So, I'm going to try to wrap this up and get this to you tonight. Also, I want to thank those of you that are signed up on Patreon. Again, another special thanks to Patrick for signing up on multiple platforms. I want to thank Anna. I want to thank Hamid. I want to thank those of you that are out there. Kind of want to bring this home to full circle. You know, there are other monuments, right, that you're not seeing that are in the area. You're not seeing right now the Rio Grande Ranchos of the San Luis Valley, of Costilla County. You know why I think a lot of people have been drawn there? Healing. To live at least for a time above the aquifer. It's grounding. To have that water underneath you. Or just simply to get away from the grid. Or to be near that river. And there's such a deep history of the Hopi Indian, but also the Clovis Indian, relying on the Rio Grande River. And so it is today. You even have the names of, and this is in another book that I have on the Hopi, they were called, it wasn't Costello. It was the Costillas. Like they had their own like Spanish sheriff's department that covered a whole region that would go after the Indians. And they were also called, I believe, Costilla or something very close to that. And there was a lot of horrible things that happened in Taos, New Mexico to the Native Americans. So I'm telling you, I'm kind of wrapping this up. I've also had some really bad luck happen in New Mexico. I always suspected it had something to do with past life activity on this earth in the American Southwest. Could be bad, could be good. We really don't know. I've been told a number of different things in my life from people that are somewhat sensitive that they picked up certain things on an ancient civilization that's extremely popular that people talk about, and the possibility that could have been there. And I've been kind of having this in the back of my consciousness for a long, long time that I'm returning to a place on the planet that I've seen before in some form, in some way, or that it has some special significance, or that it may have had significance to me in the past, and or today with regards to trying to get away from what I believe will be some of the more dangerous areas within this country. I also think the social dynamics of Colorado could also be dangerous as well, just like Oregon. But ultimately, there could be something more mystical and healing that draws people to Colorado that even some of the people here from here don't understand and don't feel because they've been here their whole lives. They may not know what it's like to walk the streets of Portland. They may not know what it's like to be in San Francisco. They may not know what it's like to be in Los Angeles or feel stuck in Southern California, San Diego. They may not know what it's like to be in New York City. They may not know what it's like to be, from like a really boring rural hick town where they don't have beautiful nature like this left. So there are people here that don't see that, and I see it. This is majestic. Even the smaller town close to here, it's like this was something at some time. And it wasn't just Native American. This was like a hidden part of the world at some point. Who knows, even more so. So there's certain monuments. There are even documentaries where Tom Horn is looking at various Native American sites around the Four Corners. He's looking for portals. He's looking for petroglyphs. He's up in Moab, Utah. Do we really have the full story? Or is there so much that is left to mystery? So this was definitely an honor of mine to present this work to you, giving credit where credit is due, and respecting the art for what it is by Bill Gorman. And what if it is just photography, right? It's just photography, man. It's just photography. Like, how many people do you know that go out and just start taking photography that's like replaying out the Sumerian tablets and other forms of history? And something that looks like a straight out of a movie with Labyrinth and David Bowie. I'm literally just waiting for David Bowie to pop out and that girl to start singing some sort of a duo. But folks, I want to thank you for watching. Till next time, I'm Alex Ansari, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within. You might find your way to a mountain that may say just that.